Laughing, hoping that I get signed. Now I own my own tracks, riding waves of the hypermind. Popular and dirt poor broke, that ain't my type of grind. If I got started.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. I'm telling you, it's probably going to be a long video. So get yourself something to drink. And we got to do news and notes first, but we're going to be talking about Dynamite from May 11th, 2022. A actual solid show where not a lot to bitch about, but there's still going to be some bitching because I'm a critic is what I do. All right. First, we got to talk about Tony Khan. Our boy Tony Khan made some interesting comments over the past week. His first comments were actually about trios championships and other titles that they will be introducing in AEW. He said, quote, "I saw Dave reported it, and nobody asked me on the record yet, but it is truthful that I have made the belts," meaning the trios belts. "I made them a long time ago, to be honest with you. They've never been seen, and I did have them made. I do have more championship belts in my possession that have never been unveiled than anybody might expect. The TBS championship was in my office for months at the shows before anybody knew it was going to be unveiled." So he ends up talking about the Ring of Honor titles. He says, "But there are more championship belts than people might think that I've had up my sleeve, and the trios championships are arguably the foremost." Look, let's be honest. AEW does not need more championships. They don't need no more belts. They already got too many people running around with belts. Enough with the belts already. Enough with people having belts. Look, I know that there's a lot of good ideas for titles, and I have even said that there's some championships that really are good ideas. A television title where there's a time limit on the match is a good idea. A mixed match title where there's a man and a woman tag team and mixed tag team titles, that's a good idea too. But a company cannot have every form of good idea. You have to have a world champion. A weight class title is a good idea. A cruiserweight championship, is a good idea. There's a lot of good ideas for championships, but you have to decide if your company has any sort of identity. What championships do you need and what championships don't you need? You don't need to have a version of every championship. A hardcore title or some type of bare knuckle championship or something like that, which used to be with any NWA, they used to call it bare knuckle title. That's an interesting one too, but not every company needs to have one. AEW as a company probably could use trios titles, but they don't need a secondary women's tag team title, or secondary women's title. They could probably use women's tag team belts, maybe. Because the women's division only has 2 singles titles, it makes no sense. You should at least have 1 singles champion, 1 women's tag team champion, the 3 main titles as far as the men are concerned. If you want to have a time limit, you use the TNT title for that, and that could be your television belt with the time limits and everything. Since everybody in AEW is smaller anyway, you don't need to do a weight class title. You don't really need to do a hardcore division type of belt either. But now they have sometimes doubles and triples of these because they're counting the Ring of Honor belts too. It's like, this is absolutely asinine. We don't need any more belts. And it's like, not only do he have trios titles, but he's talking about there's other titles. It's like, what other fucking titles could there be? How many more titles do you need to have, sir? How many more do we need? Enough, please. They've already built it up so that they will have to have a trios title. So I will say, okay, the trios titles, all right, fine. But that's it, bro. No more titles unless they're going to be women's belts. Women's tag belts. That should be it. After, because then you at least can push 3 women at a time. The 1 singles champion, the tag team champions. That's it. We don't really need a secondary women's title, but we're stuck with it. Everybody can't have a trophy, dog. I'm sorry. Everybody can't have a trophy. This makes no sense. They even got fictional fucking belts, like the FTW title. What next? They're going to bring in all the NWA belts? They defend the AAA belts on here. They were defending Impact belts on... Come on, enough. No more. All right. Tony Khan continues. We're going to continue with the Tony Khan thing as he talks about recruiting and having an eye for talent. Oh, boy. So he says, quote, Well, there's a lot of things. First of all, when you look at the body of work coming in, sometimes you get great athletes. Like Satnam Singh is a great example, or Jay Cargill. Well, they didn't have prior experience in pro wrestling, but they were great athletes. Actually, both of them played basketball at a high level. I thought they were worth the gamble. But he says, it's a different business model. There's a lot of great people, but for us, we kind of picked our spots when it comes to that thing, means recruiting. Because we're not as much about centralized training all week long. I've seen a lot of your matches before you came in. Some other people might not have seen as much experience as you and might not have had as much success, or really might not be as far along or as developed or as good. There's other people where it's hard to track them down. So he's basically saying that if you have experience, they're willing to bring you in because AEW does not have a centralized training system. So he's looking mostly for people who have experience already, which is not a problem. I don't have a problem with that. My issue is with the talent that he actually chose. You know, my issue is, look, as I've said, what comes to Tony Khan and some of the talent that he signed, a lot of these people were absolute slam dunks. You know, most of the people that he's signed has been slam dunks. People you absolutely have to bring in if you're trying to run a business. A guy like CM Punk, a guy like Bryan Danielson, a guy like Adam Cole. You kind of need them on your roster. But my issue comes with the people on the periphery. You know, the John Silvers, the Danhausens. You know, do we really need those guys? Like, do we really need Stu Grayson is gone, but do we really need him? Do we really need Dark Order? Like, who is doing the recruiting where Wheeler Yuta got in? And you have some other guys out there, like a Tom Lawler. He doesn't get a shot. You know, Tom Lawler is a great athlete, former MMA fighter, can have a hell of a physical pro wrestling match. He's not getting a call from AEW, but Wheeler Yuta is. That doesn't make, what? Oh, well, Wheeler Yuta's a young guy. Like, what? Come on. Who looks more like a pro wrestler, Wheeler Yuta or Tom Lawler? You know, who looks more like a pro wrestler? Daniel Garcia, who is only 22. He's in his larval form. Let him work the independents to get more experience. You've got, you know, other people out there who are more experienced, who you probably have to pay them a little bit more money, but they actually fit the mold better. Another good example of that is Chris Dickinson. You know, Chris Dickinson and Tom Lawler are two guys that I look at and I say, they still on the independents. What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you not signing these guys? You know, and they're available and you don't sign them? Come on. You know, I know Chris Dickinson is going through a different thing right now. He pulled himself from all his indie shows because he was, somebody said that he was sexually harassing them or sexually abusing them or something like that. But he should have been on this show a long time ago. You know, Chris Dickinson is in that Eddie Kingston, that John Moxley mold of being a legitimate pro wrestler who looks like one, who is serious about what he does. He's in great shape. He's physical. People will believe in him. He doesn't get in AEW. So you can say the same stuff about Tom Lawler. He doesn't get a shot. But, you know, even if you wanted to say it was age, you still have to ask the question, all right, what about some of the other guys that you did actually bring in? You know, what are you doing here? You know, and I get it that a lot of his recruiting, if you even want to call it that, is basically friends and people that he know, people he knew from the independents that he was fans of. That would be the Ring of Honor guys. All of those dudes, he grew up watching you. He's going to bring you in. That should be, if you're available, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with him signing Samoa Joe or Adam Cole or Kyle O'Reilly or whatever. I get it. He was a fan of those guys. He's a fan of that style. But then when you start talking about the younger guys, it's obvious that he's going through the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega, all the Japanese talent. I'm pretty sure he has not sat down and watched them. He's taken their word for it, you know? So I'm okay with him saying that we don't have a centralized training thing. It's like most wrestling companies don't have one, you know? So it is what it is on that tip. But you also need to have a conversation when it comes to a lot of the botching and a lot of the people, almost getting killed out there, you know, like on this show, for instance, where people almost died. But it is what it is. All right, so next news and notes, let's talk about CM Punk. Because our buddy Phil talked to comicbook.com about his run in AEW. And he has some rather colorful language about this thing. He says that AEW has exceeded his expectations, and that he said they've been doing very well when it comes to analytics and numbers. And he says nowadays everybody is still focused on ratings numbers when cable is absolutely. Then there's a dash. He says, I canceled DirecTV months ago. I just couldn't do it anymore. It's too convoluted. It's too expensive. Streaming services are the future. So when people look at ratings and say wrestling is dying, I say, well, look at our buildings. We are selling out and we're doing our first $1 million gate. So I don't attribute that just to me. I attribute that to the spirit of AEW and everybody behind the scenes that makes it all click. Then he says, my run, especially my stuff as a whole, I've never been happier in wrestling. To be able to tell more fluid, better, reality-based stories has been a real treat. So he's falling back on the old attendance figures, which is good. I'm never going to. They did $2 million gates. Now the asshole within me is saying to myself, inflation. Inflation. Yeah, are you doing $1 million gates because you literally made $1 million, or are you doing $1 million gates because ticket prices have gone up because of inflation? That's just a question that I'm asking. Just a question I'm asking. I also, and I saw this, I thought it was funny. Dave Meltzer says that the scalpers are buying the tickets for AEW shows, so he's admitting it, but saying they only bought the tickets because they know they can sell them. And I say to myself, well, that's a good way of massaging that. That's a good way of massaging that muscle. Go right ahead. Well, they know they can sell them, so of course all the scalpers are going to buy them. What do you mean? That's not a bad thing. They can sell them. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's not what people want to hear. But he's putting it like it's a bright side of it. Like, that's the bright side of the thing. That's cool. I also don't disagree with CM Punk when he says that cable is too expensive and convoluted. I mean, every time my dad gets a cable bill, he complains and whines and cries about it. I just tell him get rid of fucking cable. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing to yourself? Every movie that you ever want to see, you can probably find it online. That's the only reason he even has cable is because he likes watching movies all day. Just, use the internet. I can give you a movie site where you can punch in anything you want to see, even new stuff. And you can sit there and watch it. Fuck, I just watched, spoiler alert, I just watched Doctor Strange on a bootleg movie site. I was not going to the theater to watch fucking Doctor Strange. I love Doctor Strange, but I heard about this movie and I was not going to go pay to see it. So I watched it. It was in like Japanese or French or some shit like that, but with the subtitles, but I watched it. I saw the film, so. And it saved me, what was it, maybe $20 or whatever. That's cool, I maybe fuck Marvel. All right, right now I don't have it for Marvel, but I don't disagree with him when he says that cable is too expensive and there's a lot of cord cutting and everything, because it's been going on for decades and it's absolutely true. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes even millions of people, get rid of cable, especially young people. They get rid of it. But he also needs to recognize that pay-per-view model is kind of old too, and yeah, they do quite well when it comes to pay-per-view, but pay-per-view is another old ass model. And the more I learn about attendance, I'm starting to think attendance is actually starting to become an old hat way of looking at things too. But for now, attendance is at least a good barometer of people's interest in your product, so you can't really downplay that too much, but I'm hearing a lot more about sponsorships and how that could end up replacing attendance in the long run. Just looking into it, and we'll see where it goes. But we're just all very glad that Phil is happy, right? That's what happens. That's what happens. That's what the most important thing is, that Phil is happy. All right, let's talk about another delusional moron when it comes to AEW. And that is Thunder Rosa. Thunder Rosa is an absolute dumbass. She says that her feud with Britt Baker is never ending, saying it's going to be like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's right. She said it's going to be like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. These are her exact words via bodyslam.net. It says, every match that we had, it escalated to the next level. At first, we had our match that was regular match at Beach Break. Then we had the tag matches and the blow off at Lights Out. The rivalry that we had is real. Now that I took the title from her, it's not something that is ever going to end. It's like The Rock and Stone Cold, something similar, or Trish Stratus and Lita, something of that sort. Something that is never going to end. Our matches were definitely more physical in terms of female wrestling. We pushed a lot of the boundaries that I don't think people were used to seeing women in wrestling media do something of that sort, especially on that last one. I probably watched it 10 times, and I cannot tell you the amount of pain that everyone that was part of that match went through. From the wrestlers to the referees. It was very intense, and we had an opportunity to elevate women's wrestling to another level with it. Now, I don't want to disparage the young lady too much, because I get what she was trying to say. She was trying to say that The Rock and Steve Austin had a feud that just spanned a couple of years, that it spanned across time from, when they were the Intercontinental Champions and they were feuding against each other, to when they were, burgeoning main event guys, even though The Rock was sort of burgeoning and Steve Austin was kind of solidified. He had already been world champion before, main event and pay-per-view stuff like that, but The Rock was still kind of trying to break out of his shell in like 98, early 99. And then when they were icons, which would be their very last match at WrestleMania 19, both guys are indisputable legends from this feud. And she's trying to say, in time, our feud would be like that. The problem with that is she probably should have said Gail Kim and Awesome Kong. I think using The Rock and Steve Austin made people put her in that delusional box. And I'm one of them. Because I saw that, I was like, what on earth is she talking about? And I just said to myself, there is nothing Rock or Steve Austin about either one of these people. And then I read it in context and I was like, okay, I get what she's trying to say. I get it. She's not saying that, I'm like The Rock and she's like, Steve Austin or whatever. She's not saying that. But she's just saying it's going to span across generations, which I think is, everybody is being very presumptuous that AEW is going to be around 10 years, 15 years. I wouldn't say that. Okay, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't do that. It's entirely possible they could still be around in 5 to 10 years. But by the looks of things, it ain't looking good. Last note, Brett White's GM of TBS and TNT is leaving in the wake of the Warner Media merger. This is why I said that it's not looking good for AEW. This guy was one of the guys that was actually pushing for AEW. Warner Media is said to be looking to, of course, cost cut, and basic cable is one of their prime targets for cost cutting. This gentleman was one of the guys who I guess was the spearhead of moving Dynamite to TNT, or TBS rather. And it was actually, I think, one of the guys who had set up the new show that they were doing too. So he was a supporter of AEW, and it seemed like a bunch of AEW supporters, they've lost one a year, one major AEW supporter a year. Wasn't it last year, long before the merger even occurred, where another one of their supporters was fired? Another, I think it was a Turner executive, was released, and people were like, oh my God, what's going on here? And then they kind of got saved by the TBS thing. And now this guy is getting cut loose. It's hard to tell because we don't know how Turner or Discovery are going to view pro wrestling. And so without knowing that, it's impossible to say that Turner is going to, screw over, AEW. But I think they should stop trying to project too far into the future. Let's not project too far into the future. I think we should focus on making sure AEW continues to exist next year, because their contract is up in 2023. Let's just make sure we can get there. And then, of course, you're going to have a lot of releases, and there's probably going to be some other stuff that's going to happen. Let's just keep our Let's just keep it week to week, month to month, or whatever. We can say that they'll probably be around at least 6 more months. Let's put it like that. There's also, and this has not had nothing to do with AEW, but it kind of does, this whole nonsense with Kodi, Ibushi, and New Japan. Now, I was going to do a video about this just by itself, but there's a lot of silence from the wrestling media. They've written stories about it, but nobody's talking a lot about the Kodi Ibushi, big deal going on in New Japan. And since AEW is going to be doing a co-promoted show with New Japan, I might as well talk about it here. I mean, why not? Now, apparently, a translator on Twitter went through Kota Ibushi's tweet storm that he had over the last couple of days and has been finding out what on earth has been going on with Kota Ibushi. Now, apparently, this is going to be from Fightful. It says, in the messages translated by Golden Kuma, Ibushi threatened to expose the former cheaters goon who are already returned. This will be Taichi and Taka Michinoku, and the sexually harassing bosses, from the company's president's lies to the unreasonable power harassments. The text messages between Ibushi and Kikuchi revealed that Kikuchi threatened to end Kota Ibushi's contract with New Japan due to an appearance at the Just Tap Out show, that would be Taka Michinoku's show, on March the 4th that was not approved by Kikuchi. According to Voices of Wrestling, Kikuchi told Ibushi that he needed to get back in time for Wrestle Kingdom following the shoulder injury suffered in the G1 Climax final. Ibushi reportedly didn't want to wrestle until his shoulder was fully healed. He reportedly told New Japan Pro Wrestling that he was good to go for the New Japan Cup and was reportedly booked to win the tournament. However, Voices of Wrestling reports Kikuchi, under the advice of the doctor who raised that was described to me as a minor concern, pulled Ibushi from the tour, infuriating Ibushi. The report states that there is, quote, massive heat between Ibushi and Kikuchi going back several years, beginning around 2018, when Ibushi alleged Kikuchi, who at the time was running New Japan's merchandise, was shorting him on merch money. Ibushi has been out of action since he suffered shoulder injury in the G1 Climax finals against Kazuchika Okada. So you got Kota Ibushi, who's one of the biggest stars in Japan right now, saying that he's going to expose sexual harassers, that he was getting gypped on merchandise money, and that New Japan tried to force him to return early from an injury. And then when he wanted to return, they pulled him. So there's a lot of confusion going on over there. And we're not hearing a lot about it. Could you imagine if some if some Drew Gulak or something like that had come out and said WWE is screwing me on my merch money? They never shut the fuck up about this. But it's New Japan, and therefore they write the article, but that's it. No speculation of what's going on. Nobody, trying to dig deeper into what's going on. Nobody got any Japanese sources or anything like that. Nobody knows what the fuck is going on. Like, this guy's talking about exposing sexual harassment in New Japan, and everybody's just very mum about it. There are people just fucking quiet. Like, what? This is a big deal. New Japan has a history of abuse towards young guys and young talent. They wrote a whole book about it. Chris Charlton wrote Lion's Pride, which was a book that detailed how brutal New Japan was to young boys. And now Kota Ibushi is talking about, there's sexual harassers going on in there. It's one thing for them to be cheaters. Cheaters meaning guys who had sex, with other women other than their wives. It's a really big thing in Japan. You can actually be forced to take a pay cut or, get fired from your job because you had an affair. Japan is like that. All right. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's complete and total confusion because he went to a Taka Michinoku show and was in Taka Michinoku's corner on March the 4th. So Taka Michinoku is apparently his buddy. But then in the other parts of the thing, he's talking about Cheaters Goon, which is Taka Michinoku and Taichi. So is he beefing with them or is he not beefing with them? What is going on here? And that's the kind of thing that, you would think the wrestling media would get into. No. Mum's been the fucking word on anything going on in New Japan. Just, oh my God, Juice Robinson. What if Okada comes to wrestle at Forbidden Door? Speaking of which, CM Punk completely shut down wrestling Kenta at Forbidden Door, saying it's not interesting to him. Kenta laughed it off, but his feelings were hurt. He cried on the inside because CM Punk stole his finish and won't wrestle him. It is what it is. It is what it is. You just got to take the bitter with the sweet, Kenta. But you're not a draw, not interesting. He'd probably wrestle him on TV or something like that if Tony Khan asks. That's about it. But that's the entire news and notes segment, 25 minutes. And we have not even got into the show yet. Now we get into the show. All right. Adam Cole, baby, defeated Dax Harwood in a quite good match in the Owen Hart tournament. Dr. Martha Hart was there. As somebody says that she did not attend a wrestling match for over 20 years. That the last time she was at a wrestling show was in 1997 at the Calgary Stampede pay-per-view, where the Harts wrestled Austin, Goldust, I think it was the Road Warriors and Ken Shamrock or whatever the fuck that match was. I don't remember. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I don't remember. But that was the last time she was there in person. So apparently she was there for this. This match was actually pretty good. Dax Harwood is really coming to his own as a single star. If he was not so dedicated to FTR, we might be able to talk him into doing a short singles run. Like, I think he really has an Arn Anderson-like solid mid-card run in him. I think he could really pull that off. I think he could pull off being TNT champion so much better than a lot of guys that's been TNT champion recently. I think that if you put the belt on him, and you don't need to break up his team to do it, you could just have Wheeler sort of support him, be his coach or whatever, his guy in the corner. And Harwood does all the talking, does all the wrestling. I think you got something there with this guy. Because his promos are very believable, they're very realistic. And Adam Cole, his worst tactics did not really occur in this match. He didn't get a chance to really blow things out of proportion. It was a good wrestling match. And Dax Harwood gives up in the sharpshooter, which I'm pretty sure was his pleasure to do. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, I didn't know this was going to be Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels." And I'm like, "Ugh, don't do that. Don't do that to either one of these guys, man." We know how much Dax Harwood loves Bret. He's going to wrestle a Bret style. And we know that Adam Cole, was sort of the golden boy of the clique over in WWE. I get that. But let's not, have them be the spiritual successors of that whole thing. That shit comes with a lot of baggage, dog. You talk about Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, man, you talking about a lot of baggage. That's a lot of shit. I don't think they shouldn't be, burdened with that. Plus, both of these guys are like in their 30s. So come on, they're not like young guys or anything. All right. So there was a vignette for Jeff Hardy versus Darby Allin. If you wanted to know why the hell they were doing everything that they did, it was because of this vignette right here. So Jeff Hardy says that our worlds are going to collide, man. Our chemistries are going to collide, man. Our energies are going to stack on top of each other and collide, bro. They're going to fall and explode, burn up in the atmosphere, man. And Darby Allin, of course, with all the charisma of an absolute corpse. And, even Doctor Strange's corpse had more charisma than this. Nobody wants to see us exchange headlocks, man. I went to Tony Khan, asked him to waive the rules. Just let us be psychotic. And so they did. The main event of the show, Jeff Hardy versus Darby Allin. Anything goes. And they just decided to have a human bumper cars match where they were, "Hey, bro, how about I just jump on a stack of chairs?" Okay, it's your body. You do your thing. "Hey, bro, how about I swanton bomb some steel steps?" It's your spine. Do your thing. It's like, what was this? What was this? Sting shook the Hardy Boys' hand before the match. I was like, okay, at least we're not seeing anybody turn here. It's going to be good sportsmanship. And then upon the opening bell, Darby Allin shotgun drop kicks Jeff Hardy, and they go right into the tope suicida, which was, it looked like Darby Allin not only got shot out of a cannon, but that Jeff Hardy got hit in the chest with a cannonball. And I don't think he needed to sell that because it was so stiff. It was so stiff. I don't think Jeff needed to sell it. It really probably knocked the wind out of him and hurt him very, very badly. Of course, the spot from the top of the ladder with Darby Allin made absolutely no sense to do. Jeff Hardy is not that big. All right. He jumped off a ladder that was in the ring, outside the ring, in a swanton fashion, into a stack of chairs, and Jeff barely caught him, if he actually did. What was the purpose of this? Just holy shit chant. That was the purpose of it. And one thing I can say is, at least Darby isn't pseudo, I'm crazy, bro, like Sammy Guevara. He just does shit. Like he did the coffin drop on and missed on the ring apron. He didn't even look back. He just destroyed himself on that ring apron. They just decided, again, human bumper cars. We're just going to go and bash into one another, and we'll see what happens at the end. And I was like, holy guacamole. What on earth? Now, I'm sitting here, because it was, do you have a normal match between these two guys? Jeff Hardy has had 0 normal matches on this entire show. It's always been an 8-man tag, 6-man tag, tag team match, tables match, no disqualification match. This match was anything goes. Jeff apparently cannot work a regular singles match. They need the bells and the whistles and the crashes in order for a Jeff Hardy match to work. And for some people, that's fine. I just kept saying to myself, Jeff is 45, and does he really need to do that? And then yes, Darby Allin isn't that old, but you have to ask the question, how many times can he possibly make these jumps and land on stuff without fucking himself up? It's like, it's inevitable that one of these two dudes are going to hurt themselves. Like Jeff has had a history of being hurt. So it's not him that I'm concerned about. Not too much. I wish he would stop, because it's painful to watch Jeff Hardy go through this shit. It sucks, especially in a match with no fucking heat. There was no feud between these two guys where they needed to almost murder one another. And you could just say, well, they have a similar Daredevil style. So it's like, okay, but we still don't just jump to a hardcore match. We just don't do that. You have to be better than that. You have to restrain yourself. And yes, it may be interesting to blow your load. If you wanted to have a no DQ match between Darby and Jeff, you had weeks to put it together. Instead of them being tag team partners and best buds and brothers in paint and all that other shit, they should have been building some heat. They should have been in each other's faces. And then tonight could have just said, screw it, let's go. Hey, this has been brewing for a while. Let's toss the rules out. Let's see who's really nutty. But Darby Allin coming in here like a goddamn suicide bomber every week is getting insane. It's like, okay, we get it. You're crazy. We get it. I get the gimmick. It fits. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about this is Darby lost. He hit the coffin drop. It was pretty stiff. And Jeff counters it with a crucifix and pins him. I said last week that Darby needed to win because, Darby can't keep being on the losing end of these kinds of matches. You just can't do it. Since he lost to CM Punk, Darby Allin has been absolutely aimless in AEW. He's just kind of had Sting, and Sting has become wallpaper at this point, where he's just there. He's just, hey, it's Sting, and then that's it. Nobody gets excited to see Sting anymore. Unless Sting is jumping off something, nobody really cares that Sting is there anymore. We stopped really building around Sting. Nothing matters. And it's really unfortunate because Sting is, he's still a viable commodity there. But since they weren't going to make them the tag team champions and they weren't going to do anything else with them, which, question, why can't they be the tag team champions? I would rather Sting and Darby Allin be the tag team champions than fucking Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy. But we'll talk about that later. But since you weren't going to make Sting and Darby Allin the tag team champions, what was the purpose of them winning all those tag team matches? I don't know. Like, so you have to, the guy has just been completely and totally directionless. He needed to beat Jeff Hardy for no other reason than for somebody to finally see him as being somebody that you should pay attention to in the long term. Oh, sure, we want to have, what was it? I think Jeff's wrestling Adam Cole in the next round. I think that's what it is. Am I wrong in that? I haven't looked at the bracket. So, but Adam Cole did come out after the match. So I'm guessing it's going to be Adam Cole and Jeff Hardy in the next round. Okay, but why can't it be Darby Allin and Adam Cole in the next round? And Cole's winning regardless, so I don't see the problem there. Darby Allin has been fucked over. He's been probably the one guy that's been fucked over the most when it comes to AEW originals, quote unquote, that, since these guys started to come in, it's been all downhill. It has not looked good for him. And he seemed to be the guy that they cared about the most because he was the first one to win a singles championship. He seemed like he was going to be on the rise, and then they had him job out. I think he lost to Miro, I think. Was it Miro? Yeah, I think he lost to Miro. And it was hit the skids a little bit, but they saved him with Sting. And then that CM Punk glacier hit him, and he's been sinking ever since. This is, I don't know, man. I'm just saying. I know some people don't agree with me, but I'm just saying on this. Now, one of the many theories one of the many issues that I had with this show, the in-ring stuff was perfectly fine for the most part. But was there how they utilized the baby faces? Again, this match was babyface versus babyface, and they're trying to kill each other. They're literally knocking each other around like bowling pins. Why? But nothing. But this match and the MJF segment, John Silver versus CM Punk, Hangman Page is on commentary. Punk comes out wearing a New York Islanders jersey. I didn't understand it because I don't watch hockey. Do black people even watch hockey? I don't. I never met black people who watched hockey. I watched hockey when I was a kid because the Red Wings always won, and I didn't have cable and I didn't have a choice, so the Red Wings games were always on. Only reason I watched the Tigers is because I had no cable, and if the Tigers were playing, I don't know what else. It's either that or infomercials, dog. So I didn't understand this. So I went to the internet to figure it out. And apparently the guy who CM Punk was wearing the guy's jersey, and the guy doesn't play for this team anymore. He left the team or something like that. But my thing was, CM Punk is a babyface. Why is he antagonizing the Long Island crowd? He did that last time he was here. Now, even if you wanted to say, but he's feuding with MJF, and MJF is going to get a hometown reaction. All right, fine. So he's now feuding with Hangman Page. Why is he antagonizing this crowd? Why is he doing this? Why was Hangman antagonizing the crowd last week? Why are they doing this? Explain this. After Punk beats John Silver, he beats him with a buckshot lariat. Who the hell cares, really? Page came down to the ringside, and Page and Punk got in each other's faces. Punk said that Page is taking this personally, but when it comes to him, his title, it's not personal, it's just business. He said he used to wake up and ask himself if he was the good guy. Now he wakes up and asks himself if he was the champion. And he says the answer is yes. And then he goes through all the stuff about, all the things Hangman Page said about him. And he says, you're going to shake my hand, whether you're conscious or unconscious. Then he offers his handshake, and Hangman Page flips him off. And the crowd kind of has a positive reaction towards this. It's like the crowd is confused about who the babyface is. Rightfully so. Because Punk comes out there being an absolute dickhead to the audience for no reason. Hangman was being a dickhead to the audience last week for no reason. Punk is now being a dickhead to Hangman Page, but he's also kind of responding to Hangman Page being a dickhead. So it's like, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand you trying to create some heat, but can we pick the bad guy in this situation and let him work that angle? If you pick that Hangman Page is going to be the guy you root against in this match, then he should have been the guy antagonizing the audience. Maybe not wearing a silly hockey jersey, but saying something, doing something to antagonize the fans, because the fans no longer have any reason to boo CM Punk. Because if they were booing CM Punk before because of MJF, he's not feuding with MJF anymore. So we should be doing something different. They are creating areas of gray. And some people like that stuff. But other people are just going to be like, they're both shitheads. Why should I care about this? That's the average Joe. The average Joe is going to say they both shitheads. And I hope both of them lose. We need to create a babyface for this situation. We are supposed to be, treating CM Punk as sort of the sentimental favorite because he's the guy who took 7 years off and he's fighting from underneath to prove himself. That was the reason why he's fighting guys like John Silver in the first place, even though he beat John Silver pretty handily this time, which finally he beats somebody who is a job guy, like a job guy. But Punk went through, loads of undercard guys to get to this point. It's a rocky story where he's like the old, washed up sort of guy because, do I still got it? That should have been the story. Is Punk should have still been like, well, do I still got it? Hangman Page should have been like, no, you don't. Even if he was not being mean about it, he could just say, look, we all know this is not 2011 anymore. You're a little bit slower. You're just as tough, just as grizzled. But that half step off that you are now, it's a big step between you and me. You're not on my level. I'm in my prime. You're over the hill. That's how you have Hangman Page be a little bit heelish and giving CM Punk that sympathy. Continuing his story that he started when he got here, asking the question of whether he still got it. You have Hangman Page say, look, I don't see it anymore. MJF kind of played that card too, but Page is the champion. He's the guy who beat Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega is in his prime. He beat Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson is in his prime. I look at the guys that I beat. I beat two guys at the top of the business. Two of the best guys in the history of the business. Main evented a bunch of pay-per-views, yada, yada, yada. I beat them. You haven't beaten anybody on that level yet. In fact, you struggled to beat guys who are barely on TV. And say you're a half step off. You're not good enough. And you let the people who turn on Page turn on him. But you let the people who look and see that CM Punk is a half step off say, you know what? Page got a good point. Because we've all been saying that CM Punk is he's not where he used to be. Instead of, we got Page yelling at the audience last week. Now we got CM Punk just openly antagonizing the audience this week. It just makes no sense. It's stupid. All right, Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker cut a promo, which means that Britt Baker cut a promo. She complained, said there was a conspiracy, the heels with their conspiracy theories, about her having to wrestle the Joker next week. She doesn't know who the Joker is, but she doesn't care. She's going to win anyway. And then she says that she wants to talk about storms, and that storms roll in, and they're violent and exciting, but eventually they pass. And then, of course, they gave lip service to the idea that Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter could wrestle each other next week. Of course, that was never going to happen. In the women's Owen, Toni Storm defeated Jamie Hayter in a very meh match that I don't think anybody cared about. Just nobody cares. There was a very nasty German suplex by Toni Storm in this match that looked like she almost broke Jamie Hayter's shoulder. It is what it is. Toni Storm apparently is a mute. She should probably she should learn hand signals or something, because they're not going to let her talk or show any lick of personality. She's just going to get less and less over. The less personality she shows, the less over she's going to be. And there's no much more you can say about that. She's a beautiful woman, thick, beautiful girl, but thick with no personality works for pictures. It works for modeling. It doesn't work for wrestling. You got to have a personality. And if they're not going to let Toni Storm show any type of personality, what the fuck is she doing there? What is she doing there? She's been on this show for 2 months, something about. That's how long she's been there. You may think Toni Storm ain't been there that long, but she's been there at least 2 months already. At least. And this is probably her third match on TV, and she has not cut a single promo. She has not said a mission statement. She has not done anything on this show. She's a picture, you know. She looks great. That's about it. I mean, Jamie Hayter, I don't even know who the fuck that is, nor do I care. So, I mean, it is what it is. I'm not a stardom guy who cares, about anything that happened in Japan. I don't give a shit. Third match, Danhausen is defeated by Tony Nese. Tony Nese absolutely destroys Danhausen with a running knee. I was surprised. Danhausen not only lost his intro, he lost his debut match, but he also got an introduction that Tony Nese didn't get. Mark Sterling gets on the microphone, says exactly that. This guy got an introduction and you didn't. This led Tony Nese to attack Danhausen again. And as he's beating up Danhausen again, Hook ran down to the ring to save Danhausen. And then Hook and Danhausen shook hands after the bad guys fled. So Hookhausen is a real thing. Oddball tag teams. Oddball friendships. I'm okay with it. I just think that it derails Hook because this was a guy that everybody was taking seriously, that people believed in and thought was something. And because you didn't want to put him in a title picture, you don't want to beat him. You don't want to give him any tough challenges or anything like that. We're going to put him in a team with the comedy job guy. Because apparently that's what Danhausen is going to be. He's going to be the comedy job guy. Okay. But whatever. I mean, it is what it is. It's your money, dog. All right, so let's get into the MJF Wardlow stuff. All right, so I thoroughly enjoyed the mock Dark Side of the Ring stuff where Jericho says, I'm not going to narrate for this asshole. And then he says, wait a minute, how much he's going to pay? And then so he kind of gives the breakdown of the storyline between MJF and Wardlow, which was a great and unique way to do recaps. So Jericho, of course, does the recap from MJF's perspective about how Wardlow is a piggy. Barry Horowitz came in there to say that Sean Dean was a jobber. This was very entertaining. I like this. This was very good. MJF comes out there, and MJF is now also wearing an Islanders jersey. This time, I don't understand it. Did this guy actually play for the team or not? I guess he does because MJF is out there. He talks about how long he loves Long Island. He wants to get into the conditions, but he also does some babyface stuff. He says that all the people in the cheap seats, all you people are poor, but you're still beautiful. And then he asks all of Long Island to boo Wardlow, which they do. And I say to myself, what are they doing to the babyfaces in this situation? Why is MJF playing to the crowd? Why do they allow these guys to do this stupid shit? Wardlow was getting over in a major way as a babyface. And now we're going to put him in a position where this fucking guy is talking about whipping him with 10 lashes, mocking him for being 0-2 in a steel cage, and people are laughing at him. Like, people are laughing at Wardlow for being a loser in a steel cage match. People are happy he's going to get lashed 10 times. Like, what the fuck? He's the baby face. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? It's a bizarro world. That shit doesn't work. It's completely and totally unearned. Stop doing this. If I was the first time I was watching this show, and I see MJF, who is an absolute cretin, the last time I watched this show or whatever, I would say, okay, MJF is a babyface now, but he's still forcing guys to take 10 lashes in order to wrestle him. He's still able to create these scenarios where Wardlow is essentially a slave because he's not being let out of his contract. He's got to take whippings and be forced to win a cage match with the odds stacked against him. And then if he loses the match, he can't sign with AEW. All this kind of stuff all this stuff that we're stacking against Wardlow, and the crowd is cheering it. They like it because the guy who is saying this stuff is the one who's blowing smoke up their ass and blowing kisses to them and talking about how great they are and how beautiful they are. Does that make any fucking sense? Why would you derail? Look, Wardlow is not, you can do this kind of stuff when guys are a little bit more established. Let's put it like that. When Shawn Michaels can come out there and say, "Who's your daddy, Montreal?" Shawn Michaels is 10 years over already. I mean, what the fuck? You know, like, he's been over for a decade. He can take getting booed for one night. He can troll the audience and get booed for one night. But if you make Wardlow look like a fucking idiot, you know, even for one night when he's barely over, you could cut the legs out from underneath him. Now, I know that the mark audience or AEW just goes along with it. So tomorrow, next week, MJF will be the heel again, and everybody's gonna give him his appropriate boos. And I just gonna be looking at this shit like shit still doesn't make any sense. It's a wild ass gamble to get people to cheer MJF in this situation, knowing the horrible stuff he wants to do to Wardlow, who's not doing anything. He's sitting there in fucking handcuffs. That makes no fucking sense, man. It makes no sense. Anyway, Wardlow plays the fool, says he can't sign the contract because he's handcuffed. MJF gets really overconfident. He's like, "Yeah, go ahead. Let him go. Let him sign it." Spears is trying to talk him out of it. He's like, "Nah, go ahead." They unlock Wardlow. He signs the contract. Now they try to put the handcuffs back on him, and Wardlow won't go. Of course, this leads to the big scene where Wardlow is beating up the security guards again. This should have gotten a great reaction, but because of all the stuff they were doing before this, it was muted. So it was, some people were like, "Oh, okay," but also they had done this already. They had been doing it for several weeks with Wardlow beating up security. So you've dampened another big moment for the guy. You've got Shawn Spears. He's protecting MJF. He's got a steel chair. And, you know, MJF is in the corner cowering, which, of course, is not a babyface thing for him to do. If he's supposed to be the babyface in this situation, at least for this one night, shouldn't he have been a little bit braver? I don't know, man. I don't understand what's going on here. So Shawn Spears gets punched and knocked out of the way. MJF tries to flee. He's about to get powerbombed. Mark Sterling jumps on Wardlow's back, and he ends up getting powerbombed through the table. So MJF escapes, but Mark Sterling gets powerbombed. All right, fine. My question is, why doesn't Tony Nese care that his manager got powerbombed through a table? I don't know. Mark Sterling's everywhere, bro. He's everywhere. He's just got his fingers in every pot. Samoa Joe cut a promo, which I thought was very funny. He says that 1 week until he faces the Joker in the Owen Hart tournament. But since he came to AEW, he's faced is jokers. Fools and clowns like Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt. Sanjay Dutt said something, but it's Sanjay Dutt, so who really gives a shit, really? I don't care what he has to say. Jungle Boy and Ricky Starks had a hell of a match on this show. I really want to give credit to Ricky Starks when he was in the snare trap. There was a scene when he was in the snare trap, and you could see that he was selling with his eyes and his facial expression, and he was digging his nails into the mat, crawling to the ropes. That was really good stuff. Really great selling on his account. I thought this match was really solid. Thought it was really good. Two young guys really getting there and hooking up. And then they fucked over baby faces again. Swerve Strickland comes out there. No explicable reason. He actually starts distracting the referee. Jungle Boy has a visual pin on Ricky Starks. By the time the referee sends Swerve back, Starks is in the ring. He hits Rochambeau, pins Jungle Boy. So Swerve has to take the blame for this. Christian and Luchasaurus come out there, and they're kind of upset. They kind of bump into Swerve. They're out there. Of course, Hobbs is out there. Keith Lee comes out there. He gets a ovation as he just walks down the ramp. And so now they're teasing the 6-man tag for the 6 triple threat match. What the fuck am I thinking? A triple threat tag team title match with Swerve and Keith Lee versus Hobbs and Starks versus Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. Okay. I don't know, man. I don't know if this is okay or not. I mean, ultimately, it is what it is. Like, to me, it feels like Swerve and Keith Lee are being shoehorned into this thing because the story was about Ricky Starks and Look, I know Ricky Starks and Hobbs have been feuding with Lee and Swerve, but I thought they were going to set up and settle that first, and then, or they were going to let Hobbs and Starks wrestle for the titles first or something. But it seems like they're going to try to slam these two storylines together. That being said, Christian seems a little bit frustrated with Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy, again lost. And Christian went over there to give him a little hug, a little comfort. But his facial expression with the camera did not do a good job of catching because it was on the side of his profile. His profile is from the side. It should have gotten his face so that we could see head up what he was looking like. But he didn't. He was kind of stone-faced. Kind of like, yeah, generic. You did a good job. You did the best you could. Sort of generic thing. I don't know how I feel about this whole, Swerve and Keith Lee tag team thing. And then they came down there and cost Jungle Boy the match, made them look like fucking goofs. Well, made Swerve look like a fucking goof. You put heat on Swerve. Why? Again, what are they doing to the babyface? Swerve. It's been one thing if Hobbs was trying to interfere or something like that. But it seemed like Swerve just distracting the ref. And it was like, that's, nah, not necessary. Putting so much heat on your baby faces makes no sense to me. But I'm not 2-time, soon to be 3-time Booker of the Year. I'm not that guy. All right, we're coming up to the last segment here. The Jericho Appreciation Society, they had a victory speech. Jericho did all the talking, of course, saying that they did what they said they were going to do and destroy Eddie Kingston and Santana and Ortiz, and that they're gone, you'll never see them again, which of course means you'll definitely be seeing them again. Told Eddie Kingston to stay at home and he's take care of his young wife, and if he doesn't want to, he can tell his wife to give him a call. John Moxley interrupted this whole shabazzle, and I was wondering, okay, why is he doing this? And I thought about okay, he's friends with Eddie Kingston. Now he just comes out and looms over them through the crowd and just kind of does his John Moxley shoulder swivel thing and doesn't get in the ring, doesn't say anything, doesn't have any animosity or anger or anything about this. He just kind of comes out and swerves. Jericho told Moxley to get lost. Danielson at Regal and Utah shows up on the ramp. Jericho told them to kick rocks, that it was still 4 against 5. I guess he counted Regal. Then Eddie Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz showed up. That makes it 7-on-5. The Jericho Appreciation Society is outnumbered and then jumped by 7 baby faces. Okay. Odd decision. 4 of whom have nothing to do with this storyline, by the way. So it's just like 4 random baby faces showed up to help Eddie Kingston and Santana and Ortiz. But all right, you would think that the street toughs wouldn't need so much help, that they would, again, be the sympathetic guys and fight from underneath. They did the makeup job for Eddie Kingston's burned face. It was a nice try. It wasn't as awful. It wasn't awful. At least they tried to sell it. They did an angle, I believe, after Eddie Kingston called Jericho on the phone and threatened him via on Rampage. They did a storyline idea where Jericho got a restraining order against Eddie Kingston. Now, that would have been a good reason for Kingston to not be there. As for him to say he didn't want to go to jail because of the restraining order or whatever. And, for Moxley to show up and say, you ain't got no restraining order against me. And then Santana and Ortiz, like, you ain't got no restraining order against us. That would have been a nice little twist. Like, how are you going to explain now that Jericho got a restraining order and yet Eddie Kingston still showed up? I don't know. Do you think they thought this thing through? I don't think so. But it was an okay segment. I'm not really a fan of the baby faces outnumbering the heels, and especially by such a large margin. I get that Regal shouldn't really count, but even if he doesn't count, it's still 6-5. If it had been 5-on-5, okay, but it's still kind of 6-5. Now, some people seem to think this is going to lead to a blood and guts match, where it's going to be 5-on-5. And I'll say, so it had to be 2 members of the Blackpool Combat Club, so it had to be like Danielson and Moxley, apparently, who would join up with Kingston to fight the Jericho Appreciation Society. And the Blackpool Combat Club has to consider themselves pro wrestlers, which, of course, we know that they do because of the epic vignette they did the previous week where they talked about, pro wrestling and how much the business means to them. So it's not like totally against all logic that the Blackpool Combat Club would come out there. I just felt like it was kind of unnecessary. Like, we're kind of mixing streams here in a way that really, the Blackpool Combat Club has just kind of been floating about. They haven't been doing anything major. They haven't been involved with anything since they really formed. It's just been random 6-man tags. So for them to come out and challenge the Jericho Appreciation Society, it looks like, okay, we could pick 3 loser members of the Jericho Appreciation Society, and then Blackpool Combat Club can beat them up. 2.0 and Hager, or 2.0 and Garcia. Okay, Blackpool can beat them up. Fine, that could be fine. And they looking for challengers or whatever. All right, cool. And maybe that's the direction they will go in. But it seems like they also want to do that blood and guts thing, which I don't get that. Doesn't make much sense to me. All right, they did a vignette for Serena Deeb versus Thunder Rosa by talking about how cerebral Serena Deeb is and how tough and physical Thunder Rosa is. And I was just kind of like, man, you can't make this match sound more boring. It just can't make this match sound more boring. I'm sorry. I like both of these girls, but literally, they made this match sound super boring. Like, it's not going to be interesting at all. And the final thing here is the Scorpio Sky, Kazarian, Sammy Guevara thing. So apparently Scorpio Sky is back to being a heel. I don't know, because he says that it's going to be friendly fire on Rampage. He's going to wrestle Kazarian, and it's going to be some friendly fire, and it's going to get hot. Sammy Guevara goes up to Kazarian and says that he shouldn't trust Scorpio Sky, the guy that he was in SCU with, he was friends with. That's not the same guy anymore. That guy is gone. Kazarian told Sammy Guevara to go and be annoying somewhere else. And they kind of exchanged words. And I was like, man, this TNT title division is absolutely abysmal. And nobody cares about any of these fucking guys. Sammy Guevara is substantially less over than he used to be. Mainly because of the whole Ty Conti thing. And Scorpio Sky was never really over in the first place. He is the... did I call him the Cory Booker of AEW? He's the Sam Wilson of AEW. He's the Falcon of AEW. They want to make him Captain America, but it'll never actually work out, right? So they want him to be something that he really isn't, Instead of actually finding black talent that's actually very good, they want to go with Scorpio Sky, who is like, the broccoli of black guys. Like, oh yeah, you're supposed to like this guy. You're supposed to like him. I'm like, no, I don't like Scorpio Sky. He's boring. He's not interesting. And Kazarian is 15 years over the hill, Sure, he was funny when he was hanging out with Christopher Daniels, but, well, I probably not 15 years. 15 years ago, what, 2007? Maybe not that far back. Maybe 10 years? When was Kazarian the X Division champion? And it seemed like he might have something going for him. Would have been 2008 maybe. So maybe it was about 15 years. And plus, Kazarian is not even really a full-fledged member of this fucking roster. Like, when was the last time he had a match on TV to actually earn anything? When was the last time he beat anybody on TV? It's just... it's all bad, man. That TNT title is really taking a beating. Well, so it is what it is. But all in all, I didn't really hate this show. The main event was Crash TV of a different sort, where these guys just insist on putting each other in the emergency room. I really enjoyed Jungle Boy versus Ricky Starks. I really enjoyed Adam Cole versus Dax Harwood. I have nothing negative to say about either one of those matches, really. Outside of the finish to Starks and Jungle Boy, I didn't care for that finish. But other than that, the match itself was pretty good. I just, Hater and Storm, who cares? Like, nobody really cared about that match. Danhausen and Nice, even though it was only a couple of seconds, I was kind of like, the whole Hookhausen thing, I wasn't really a big fan of it. The Jericho stuff and the MJF stuff, the Jericho stuff I think was a little bit better. But the MJF stuff would have been very solid if he'd just been in character and not OOC, which is out of character. You know, why he won't be a heel in Long Island just doesn't make sense to me. From a narrative perspective, why is this place so different from any other place? I don't care that he's from there. Guys have played heels in their hometowns before. You know, should a guy, every time he goes into his hometown, be the babyface? That doesn't make any sense. We don't need to do that. You know, so I don't know. But it hindered Wardlow, I think. And I think that babyfaces took a really huge hit on this show. Punk and Paige don't know who the heel is, don't know who the babyface is. Swerve got an unnecessary amount of heat in that match with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. Jungle Boy and Ricky Starks. MJF cut Wardlow off at the knees by being an ultra babyface and then never letting Wardlow talk. Even though he's the one talking about he's going to give him 10 lashes and bury him in the lake and everything. He got to do all this crazy stuff because you're a piggy and you're a slave. And people are like, yay! Like, it doesn't make any sense. But this is AEW. It'll all make sense in the end, right? Long form storytelling, right? All right. Like, share, and subscribe, y'all. And I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out. All right.